Okay, Callum, 7 changes then from Brora, I believe. Still won the game. Brora, a lot of depth now, clearly.
Aye, well that's been the big difference like throughout the summer and even into this season that I think Ali McDonald's been trying to get, was that extra strength and depth which they now have, because if you looked at last season and even the one before that, there were times where they were sort of working away with sort of maybe the same 13 or 14 players. They've got a bigger squad now, and I mean the changes on Saturday, it was a mixture of some enforced and some not, and again by choice. And I thought they were the dominant side over the 90 minutes, and they still looked fairly comfortable. I mean, the early goal was a boost for them, and for there I thought they sort of controlled proceedings quite well. I mean, Deveronvale, games against Brora aren't how their season is going to be defined. Yeah. Ultimately, I thought there were some good things in it for them, but it's like, as Craig Stewart was touching on, the 3 goals they've conceded, all 3 of them are very soft, but then by the same token, if you don't concede them, Brora maybe had other opportunities which, if they'd needed to in another day, they would have stuck past Sean McIntosh. So I thought Vale stuck to their task and competed well, but Brora were always sort of the dominant side over the 90 minutes, I felt.
Yeah, I thought the 3rd goal was never going to come for Brora, but Craig Stewart in his post-match, he did sort of suggest that he felt there was maybe a hint of offside before the penalty that Tony Dingwall won and then eventually scored from. I mean, it was kind of like, in our footage, maybe borderline.
I've looked at it, and the issue slightly with the freeze frame is you can't see for definite when the ball's played, because there's a Vale player obstructing seeing when the ball's played. But at the point when the ball is obscured, Kyle McLeod looks to me like he's bang in line, so I think he was just onside there, so I would give him the well, I'll have to say benefit of the doubt, because we can't say conclusively, but at the time I could see why you think it was offside, but I think looking at it back, I think he was onside. And and overall, I mean, for Brora as well, if you look at the bigger picture,
all they can do is win, isn't it?
Aye, well, it's going back to the depth thing. It's like they will need it, because basically for them from now to the end of the season, it'll be playing Wednesday every week, weather permitting, of course. But I mean, they're 18 points off the top of the table, but then they do have these 5 games in hand, so it's a bit like with them and with Bucky that we'll come to later. If you can't put that run together, they're certainly not out of the title race yet, but it's obviously a big ask on them in terms of both winning the games and also the physical demand it'll put on their squad to try and catch up and get the points required to be in the mix sort of come the last 6 weeks of the season.
Yep. Okay then, well, let's move on to game 2 from Saturday. It was Turriff United against Formartine United at the Hacks. Okay, Formartine, you've got to grind them out sometimes, but it was a great game, plenty of chances. Turriff had a good chance to go 2-1 up that Hugh McDonald saved in the second period. Formartine then looked maybe to have passed up the chances they had to win it, but then they get the late penalty which is converted. And I mean, we've said it enough about Formartine, haven't we, that like they're a team that don't give up, they find ways to win.
No, they've got a really good resolve about them, Formartine. I mean, you used the word grind, and I think Stuart Anderson used it in his interview after the game as well, but I actually thought going on the highlights, that was maybe doing them a bit of a disservice, because I thought actually for both sides, from what we've seen, it was a really good game, chances at both ends and things like that. Formartine probably had more of them. I mean, I think certainly in sort of the final 20 minutes or so, I think the likes of being able to bring on subs like Scott Lyle, who looked lively, and Paul Campbell, who's won the penalty, that sort of quality to introduce from the bench maybe just swung things in Formartine's favour a wee bit, whereas Turriff's bench, well, there's no denying they're good players. There was quite a lot of youngsters on it on Saturday. They had a few, but Turriff had a few sort of regulars missing, and maybe that makes a difference in the end. But I thought it's one of them where Formartine probably on the balance just about deserved it, you would say, but then as you touched on, if Ewan McDonald doesn't make that excellent save for Ewan Clark at 1-1, could be a very different game. And I think for Turriff, it's like they've shown, after beating Fraserburgh last Wednesday, they've shown again, a side like that, they can certainly compete, and they've just come out on the wrong side of it on this occasion. I mean, for Formartine, they're 7 points behind leaders Brechin, having played the same number of games. So although there is that wee gap, I certainly wouldn't rule them out of the title race at this stage. There's still a lot of twists and turns potentially, and I mean that's Formartine taking 16 points out of 18 since the middle of November, so they've shown they're capable of putting a good run together. The one interesting thing I think out of this game was obviously the penalty at the end, where there's maybe some contention that it was outside, the foul was outside the box. I mean, certainly the angle we've got,
another good angle from
you can't say for definite where it was. It looked, I mean, it does look, slowing it down, as if the contact might initially be outside the box anyway. Whether it was a tangle of legs, whether it continues inside the area, I don't know, but it's one of them for the referee Filippo Mazzoni and his assistant as well. It's a very difficult call when it's right in the edge like that and the speed it happens at. So as much as I'm sure there'll be Turriff supporters who might dispute that and be unhappy, at the same time, like we were watching it back, and you can't say for definite, and the referee only gets the one chance at it, so I don't think anyone could be too critical of him in that regard. And obviously once it's awarded, Johnny Crawford does what he does and sticks it away well, and 3 points for Formartine.
Cool head. It's also a horrible clash of heads in that game. Hopefully both players are okay. They seem to be. Max Foster was obviously sent off later in the game. The seismic result from the weekend, if there was such a thing: Nairn County 3, Buckie Thistle 0. What did you make of this one? Did you see this one coming?
I don't think Nairn winning is a massive surprise on the sort of form they've been in this season overall, or certainly the last 3-4 months. Maybe the score line and the manner of the victory is more of the surprise, because I thought, having seen footage of this game, I thought Nairn were well worth it, and they were certainly on top, and they created a lot of chances, and on another day maybe could have won more convincingly. Buckie, in fairness, at 1-0 especially, created a couple of good chances, which if they'd gone in, it's maybe a different game. But I mean, I thought it was telling. Graham Stewart said it was Buckie's worst performance in about 3 years, which, you know, well, he's obviously seen all the games, so he's in a position to comment, but that's quite a statement to make, and it's obviously valuable points dropped for them. But for Nairn, I mean, they've been quite vocal about trying to be in the top 5 this season, and it's results like that that will get you there. If you can, you know, if you want to be in that top 5, top 6 mix, you've got to be consistent against all the teams below you and around you. But then when you're playing those sides that inhabit the top 5, especially at home, you need to get results to try and get yourself in there, and that was a very good result. And I think Nairn's signings, their business that they did in January, Ben Barron coming in on loan for Elgin, he's scored 4 goals in 3 games, could have probably had more on Saturday. I thought Horace Ormsby was lively on Saturday, and even he would tell you he probably should have had a couple of goals with the chances he had. Harry Henham came in, he scored, and even the ones already had, like Callum Mackay, Andrew McLeod, they're still having an impact as well. So Stephen Mackay now has a squad there that is quite strong, and I mean, still a long way to go obviously, but at this stage they've put themselves in a position where they could finish in the top 5, and given that they won a cup in the first half of the season, if they could finish in top 5, winning a cup, it would be
tremendous.
An excellent well, certainly compared with sort of recent times in the last 7 or 8 years, it would be a terrific season for the wee county.
With the amount of games Buckie have in hand, I know that some of the games they've still got to play are against, you know, some of the strongest teams in the league, but could they maybe afford to have one of those days 5 games in hand, still on leaders. Brechin 15 points behind. If they win all those games in hand, they're level.
Aye, well, I mean, certainly
They
at
would
this.
have wanted it.
They obviously didn't want to drop points, but I don't think at this stage you could say, "Oh, that's a major slip up." But it just means there's probably less margin for error going forward. And Buckie have got quite a run coming up a little bit later in this month, where I think they're away to Brora on a Wednesday night. They play Brechin at Glebe Park on the Saturday, and then they play Fraserburgh on the Wednesday. So I think that's a run of games that coming up later this month that you would have to look at for Buckie and think, well, if it could maybe go one or two ways. Like, you could win all 3 and suddenly it's very interesting, but then if there's maybe a couple of defeats out of those 3 games, it's a long way back, clearly, even though you would still have a few games in hand.
Yeah. Next 2 games to discuss: Brechin City 2, Lossmouth 0, Bankside 2, Keith 0. Hint of the kind of routine about these ones. Brechin, first of all, Jamie Richardson, Danny Handlin with the Brechin goals after what sounded like some pretty resolute first half defending from Lossy. One of those, isn't it, where because of the way they've competed in the game, Lossy probably leave reasonably happy as well?
I was going to say, it's despite the result, both teams probably happy enough. I mean, Lossy, you mentioned, were beaten 5-1 by Nairn in last Wednesday, so to come back with a sort of battling performance like that, pleasing. They'll be frustrated. They'd done the hard work in the first half, went in 0-0, and then I'm sure the message at half time would have been to try and keep frustrating Brechin as long as they could, and then on the counter, you never know, but within a minute of the restart, Jamie Richardson had made the breakthrough, and that changes the game, and then obviously the second goal finishes it off. But I mean, good stuff in there for Lossy and for Brechin. It's one of them where you're playing, your league leaders playing at home, you're expected to win. They've done the job convincingly enough in the end. It's another 3 points, and I mean, they're looking in a strong position at the moment. And as I've said before on here, but having played the games and having the points on the board, they're definitely in the strongest position, and they're in the position everyone wants to be in at the top of the league. So fair play to them. And I mean, even looking at, again, recruitment that they've done, managing to get Matthew Wright in on loan from Ross County for the rest of the season, that's another signing that bolsters them for between now and the end of the season, because it's a player that's scored for Ross County's first team, been at Montrose, Falkirk, Elgin in the Scottish League, and even when he had a spell in the Highland League a couple of seasons ago with Brora, scored 20 odd goals in half a season. So all the signs point to Brechin getting stronger, if anything, at the moment.
It was a deflected strike for them from Mark Gilmore close to half time initially, and then it sounded like a superb Chris Antoniazzi shot in the second half that, I mean, it keeps their title challenge in track, doesn't it, that one against Keith?
Well, this is the thing, Bankside, they're 4 points behind, they've played a game more, but again, with the games everyone's still got to play, they're still very much in the hunt. I think it's 4 league wins in a row they've had now after that draw, since that draw they had against Nairn up at Nairn. So, Bankside are doing what they had to do. Again, for Keith, maybe seems like luck's out a wee bit just before half time, and it's, from what I've heard, their goalkeeper Craig Reid wouldn't have had any chance with the opener, and then at 1-0, eventually Keith will have to chase it a bit more, and they couldn't get back into the game. But it seems like they've performed well, and I think they'll just be relieved maybe to come to the end of the spell they've just gone through, because their last 5 league games they've played Bankside twice, Brora, Formartine and Fraserburgh. So no matter who you are, good luck getting many points out of that run, really.
Fraserburgh 2, Forest 1. Now Lee Fraser had Forest in front in this one. 150th goal for the club, not bad for a guy that plays a good few games, certainly nowadays at centre half.
Well, I think he was back up front on Saturday, and maybe, I think, going forward, now that Ryan McRitchie's in there, going forward he might be up front a bit more regularly, but that's the thing, for the last couple of years he's sort of been mainly at centre half. But I think for Lee, especially as well, bearing in mind the injury problems he's had over the years as well, to reach that milestone, tremendous achievement. Not many people can, ever do that. And he's been at Forest for so long and been such a great servant, and it's good to see him still, reaching milestones and doing things like that. And I think as well, the stage he's at, he's probably still got quite a few years left in him. So especially if he's back up front, you'd hope 200 might be on the agenda for him as well. But a great achievement.
Tallest player in Highland League, maybe?
Certainly been the discussion.
Yeah, we never really had. We'll have that chat after this. Scott Barber came off the bench to score twice in 10 minutes for Fraserburgh. Could have had a hat trick, but another reminder of just how potent he can be.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting. Fraserburgh, sort of after losing at Turriff, team was sort of shuffled around a bit, and you'd Scott Barber and Ryan Sargent on the bench. I mean, they're no bad players to have to come on when you're needing a couple of goals, and Scott's obviously delivered. I mean, I think Fraserburgh probably pleased in two regards. One, getting back to winning ways, and also once they were 2-1 in front, being able to see it out, because we've seen recently, like the Clark game at home that they drew, and then Turriff last midweek when they lost the winner in stoppage time. It's a couple of games where they have maybe conceded late on and not seen things through. So to win in the manner they did, probably pleasing. I mean, I was interested, Mark Cowie said after the game in midweek that the league was gone for them. I mean, they're 8 points behind Breedon, having played a game more. And you're probably looking for favours a wee bit. It's a long way back maybe, but by the same token, regardless of your view on it, the thing that I think's guaranteed is that they will have a big say on who could win it, because they play Formartine this weekend. They've got Bucky to play, they've got Brora to play twice, they've got Breedon to play, they've got Banks of D to play. So whether it's beyond them to put the run together to win it, maybe, but I think they certainly will have a big say in who could win it. And on the other side of it, Forest as well, I mean, it's like, I thought there was a lot of encouragement in the performance for them, sort of what you'd be looking for. Jamie Mickey debuting and played, I think, 75 minutes, seemed like he'd a good game in the middle of the park, and that's more like it. But it was just second half, the subs Fraserburgh made and maybe playing down the hill as well, Forest just couldn't quite weather that storm that sort of came their way, and they've obviously lost the couple of goals, and it's maybe slightly harsh on them as well for what they put into the game, that again they were left empty-handed.
I think I noticed Jamie Mickey criticising his mum's photography skills on social media, which is, it's a disgrace, Jamie, it's a disgrace. We're off this one, Inverurie Locos 4, 2 goals in this one, Locos first and third from Miles Gaffney. Come back to him in a second. Inverurie Locos' other goals were Jay Halliday and then Callum Duncan. Sounded like Ross's goal that actually made it 2-1 after Locos had scored a couple was a cracker.
I've seen it. It was some striker.
But yeah, I mean, Locos are creating chances and taking them now, and they'll be right on Ross's coattails if they win their games in hand, which, like, based on how Locos started the season, it's a decent achievement from them under Dean Donaldson since he's come in. But Miles Gaffney, for me, is somebody that I am seeing named as a scorer pretty much every game for Locos. He's certainly banging them in. He's
hit a really good vein of form. There's maybe some debate over how many goals he's got, because I've got him as down as 7-12, and I saw an article, Dean Donaldson was quoted as saying he's got 13, but either way, he scored a barrel load recently. I mean, the thing already is maybe a wee bit is thoughts turn into the end of the season and whether they can get him again next season on loan or permanently or whatever. That remains to be seen, but he's certainly been a good player to have brought in, and he's added a lot to their attack. I mean, they're still going the right way in Inverurie. Clearly, they're still certainly not the finished product either, and I think come the summer you maybe see a few changes again, and sort of when Dean Donaldson did a pre-season as well with him, maybe a different side to them next season. But certainly the improvement over the last couple of months has been very encouraging for them, and away for the league, Aberdeenshire Cup they're still in. They play Formartine on Wednesday in the quarter-final. I think that's a massive, well, it's a cup quarter-final, it's big, but it's a massive game for them in a sense, because if they could potentially go through and try and win a cup from the sort of way this season started, if they ended it lifting their first silverware in 8 years, it would be a pretty amazing turnaround for Rothes. They're still looking for or working towards appointing a new manager. It's been nearly a month now since Ross Jack left, and whoever gets it's just inconsistency and trying to cut that out a wee bit. You look at their last, I think they've played 5 games this year, 2 losses, 2 draws, 1 win, which was 8-2 against Strathspey, but it's just you don't really seem to see what or know what you're getting sort of from one game to the next.
Yeah. Clacknacullin 2, Huntly 4. Clack were in front in this one via Brora, Loney, Miller, Gamble. Andy Hunter then levelled for Huntly with his head from a Ryan Sewell delivery on 49 minutes. Andy Hunter then put Huntly 2-1 up with his head from a Ryan Sewell delivery. Callum Murray scored to make it 3-1. Hunter then headed a Ryan Sewell corner off the bar, but I think Angus Grant tucked away the rebound to make it 4-1. Lewis McKenzie then scores Clark's second late on. It sounded like wind had a big part to play in this one. I think it affected both the teams in either half. But I suppose for Huntly, when they had the wind against them in the first period, Miller Gamble puts Clark ahead. It was about being resolute and keeping themselves in the position where they could then go on and do what they did when they had the wind.
I would agree. I think Colin Charlesworth actually in his quotes afterwards touched on that a wee bit in terms of the first 15-20 minutes they didn't start well and they lost an early goal, and they probably did well to stay in the game at that point. And then the flip side, Connor Gethins, I think seen Clark in a few games this season actually where they've made bright starts and either scored or haven't scored, but then they haven't quite managed to push on. And even last month, Turriff game, which we had highlights of, they had themselves in front at half time in a bit of a similar story. Sort of once the equaliser went in, things went awry quite quickly for them. I think the thing is as well, you're seeing with Huntly. I mean, Huntly, this is maybe doing them a slight disservice, but I think it's fair to say they're probably, you could call them the entertainers, because there's not many games. If you look at the scores either way, there's not been many games they've been involved in this season, win, lose or draw, that you could have classed as dull. To be honest, I mean, we saw one last week, and Saturday seems another example, and they've scored. The tied top scorers have scored 59 goals, and them and Banks of Dee, I think, are the tied top scorers with 59 goals each. So that's a demonstration of the quality they have. I mean, Andy Hunter's been the sort of shining light. I think he's 18 goals now. Angus Grant's 8. I think Robbie Foster's the same. Dangana had 7 or 8 when he was there. Brodie Allen 6 or 7. So it's clearly there's quite a lot of goals in that Huntly side. And I mean, again, there's obviously a lot of games to play and a lot of work to do, but they're probably a bit like Nairn and Turriff again, sort of seeing if they could maybe that 5th, 6th, 7th, seeing where they could be in that mix. And I mean, in the form of the last couple of Saturdays with Huntly, they maybe could put a run together and be in and around that.
Certainly got the attacking cohort. Another game that sounded like it was potentially wind affected was Wick Academy 3, Strathspey Thistle 2, the final game to discuss from Saturday's Breedon Highland League results. Wick used the wind in their favour to go 3-0 up in the first half via Gordon McNabb, Kyle Henderson and Jack Halliday. Jack Davison then pulled 2 back for Strathspey with the wind in the second half. I mean, it sounded like both teams created loads of chances when they had their half with the wind. Just Wick kind of took more of theirs, was how I sort of read this one. Yeah,
that seemed to be the sort of feeling. I mean, I think it's like one of them where Gary Manson felt with chances Wick had. If it had been like 4, if they'd taken another couple and it's say 5 at half time, it probably is game over. But Wick, you know, confidence has been in short supply a wee bit. That's our first win since the 4th of November. But then once Strathspey scored, and it was quite early in the second half as well, and with the advantage of the conditions, it became quite nervy. And in the end, the Scories have maybe done well to actually see that out. I think for Strathspey, it's like we spoke about Huntly. So I mean, the conditions I think at Harmsworth are potentially worse from what I've heard. But we spoke about Huntly keeping themselves in the game against Clach. Strathspey lost a goal in 3 minutes, and I'm sure that Robert McCormick would have been wanting them try and, you know, 1 or 2-0 at half time, and then have a right go in the second half. And it's shown that 3 was just that wee bit too much for them to climb. And what's frustrating for them as well is it's maybe the same old problems a wee bit in terms of defensively, because the likes of even on Wednesday against Rothes, they scored twice, they were in front twice at McKessick Park, ended up getting beat 8-2. And again on Saturday they scored twice, but they're not giving themselves enough of a chance. And I mean,
too many goals. Yeah.
I mean, Jack Davison as well as a player that's in really good form. He scored 5 and 3, and I mean, obviously Strathspey supporters will be hoping he can keep that going. But it's easy me sitting here saying it, but they do need to find a way to try and tighten up at the back, because I mean they're still the 7 points adrift, but it's getting sort of the next 6-7 games could be crucial. You know, if they're still sitting on 4 or 5 points at the end of sort of the next 6 or 7 games, it'll be hard to see a way off the bottom for them. So it's, you know, they're certainly not done for by any means yet, but it is getting to the stage where time will be of the essence in terms of picking up results. So they'll be hoping they can do that.
Yep. All right. Well, let's have a look at the Breedon Highland League standings as they are now.